Hello, my name is Adam Rueda. I'm 28 years old, and I've grown up and lived in New Jersey almost my entire life. I'm running to represent Bergen, Passaic, and Sussex County as the U.S. Representative for New Jersey Congressional District 5, which is up for election on November 3rd, 2026. As a candidate not willing to bend the knee to either existing duopoly party, I come to you without many resources, but I'm hopeful this video will find its way to young and working class voters alike, and to all voters who demand radical change in this country, as well as true representation for their district and their state. I was born in Livingston on May 30th, 1997, to two children of immigrants who grew up in Irvington. My dad worked at PSE&G as a crew chief in Clifton for many years. After living in Caldwell for a short time, as a small family, we moved north to Sussex County with the dream of open space, clean air, low crime rates, and new beginnings. My little sister was born into a world of chaos in September 2001, 6 days after the 9/11 attacks. My parents sacrificed a lot to make sure we were raised in a safe place where education could be the priority. They both gave up their own lives to put us through private Catholic school with the sole intention that their children could have opportunities that they did not. As I look out into the world in the year 2025, proudly a first-generation college graduate and loaded to the brim with diverse life experience from working in commercial real estate in Morristown, interior design in Short Hills in Manhattan, and DJing in New York City and Brooklyn, I honestly have trouble coming to terms with the sorry state that our great country is in. Throughout the course of my life, I have watched as our two-party political system has become more and more polarized and more toxic. I have watched as a once fluid party system has hardened into nationalized brands that correspond with certain policies in certain geographical regions. This system, in its current form, now perpetually locked in gridlock, serves almost no one efficiently. I have watched families be torn apart by automatic assault rifles that were made for the most extreme combat situations that were instead used in grade schools and churches. I have watched as voters become more and more cynical, more and more likely to be triggered, and less invested in political outcomes. I have watched the scale, volume, and intensity of natural disasters continue to increase at an alarming rate.
Tonight, an unfolding catastrophe in Asheville, North Carolina. Homes and buildings swept away by raging floodwaters that have submerged the town.
It's beyond anything I've ever seen in my lifetime.
I have watched as precious ecosystems, treasured lands, and national parks burn to the ground.
Wow. Tonight, the fury from two raging wildfires laying siege to the north rim of the Grand Canyon.
We are all getting evacuated right now.
Park officials confirming the historic Grand Canyon Lodge was consumed by flames.
Exxon has been misleading the public about how much plastic is actually recyclable. The investigation is trying to figure out, did Exxon deliberately deceive people into thinking, hey, if you recycle, we're going to solve all these problems with plastic waste?
Fuel and petrochemical industries have engaged in a half-century campaign of deception.
I have watched as our invaluable oceans and lakes are systematically pumped full of plastic, pollution, and toxins, and then watched these same perpetrators of this destruction post cute and clever greenwashed ads on social media with the intent to deceive and misinform the general consumer. I have watched as we have allowed mega corporations with deep pockets to suppress scientific truth tracing back to the 70s and 80s, and then watch these same companies push narratives of blame for environmental destruction onto everyday individuals who use plastic straws or forget to recycle. We have allowed interest group campaign funding and corporate lobbying to completely dominate upcoming political candidates, and by extension, the candidate's subsequent political philosophy once elected. We have watched establishment incumbents often raise, literally, $10 to $20 million per election cycle to fund their campaigns for re-election, forcing young, eager, and upcoming American leaders to have no choice but to bend the knee to the corporate or interest group financing they may have available to them if they want to have a real chance to compete in the election and win. At a certain point, we need to stop allowing our most powerful seats in government to be bought and sold to the highest bidder. We have watched, powerless, as aligned Republicans and Democrats work together as a uniparty to fully control What issues are made available on the ballot to the general public during election years? We have allowed fear, egregious corruption, and shameless greed to openly rule this country since at least the early 2000s. The majority of existing politicians in DC are already bought and paid for by corporations and interest groups. I am deeply concerned that career politicians are enriching themselves by voting on behalf of their own financial holdings and interests and not the constituents they are there to actually represent. Many existing politicians accept massive funding from the fossil fuel industry and even more from AIPAC, the pro-Israel lobby. I believe this lobbying and campaign financing shackles our representatives to advocating for their financiers and contributes massively to the problems we have with the war on science and our enabling and funding of genocide. When I adjust my focus more locally in an attempt to find the root causes of some of these issues, I find our own incumbent representative in NJ-5 is a profiteering, pro-censorship warmonger. I find someone who has enriched themselves from a net worth of $5 million in 2017 when he took office to a current net worth of more than $50 million, a gain of more than 900% over the past 8 years. This obscene wealth accumulation is achieved by incessantly stock trading on insider and privileged information and by accepting endless corporate and international lobbying. His new riches are a handsome price paid in exchange for a promise to author bills and push the agenda of his donors over the interests of his constituents in northern New Jersey. I find a henchman of Israel First, pro-Israel policy who aims to silence dissenters and threaten and bully any opposition.
Well, I don't think members of Congress should be directly involved in trading. I think you should have to turn it over, as I have when I got into Congress, to a third party and not be able to give any direction on the buying and selling.
شيرين أبو عقلة الجزيرة الخليل.
أنس الشريف الجزيرة.
إسماعيل الغول الجزيرة.
الاحتلال.
احنا ما بدنا مساعدات، احنا بدنا توقفونا الحرب وبنرجع لحياتنا الطبيعية وسلنا.
في الدقائق الأخيرة إيمان عند 62 شهيدا.
بآليات الاحتلال الإسرائيلي في هيئة شجاعية.
يبقى في مدينة بيت حانون.
واصل جيش الاحتلال لليوم الرابع على التوالي استئناف عمليته العسكرية.
You know, I was looking through it. Who does run as a third party for you? Because you're listed as one of the most frequent traders in Congress. One of the sites I was looking at showed that you had 134 trades just in the first quarter of 2021. Who's making those decisions?
Yeah, I saw that news report, and that's news to me because I've got an investment firm that does it. It's handed over. I literally have no idea what they do.
I remember growing up and learning about World War II in 8th grade and beyond, and wondering how a sovereign nation and the surrounding populations could turn a blind eye to something that was so blatantly morally wrong. As the political waters here in the United States in 2025 continue to darken, I see the seeds for moral atrocities in fertile ground, sprouting and blossoming in real time and in full color. I often see activist groups protesting for certain causes, but I genuinely wonder who in the federal government they are still hoping to reach that is not already aware of the swelling dissatisfaction of the general public. Our government has been completely hijacked. The halls of our national government are dominated by corruption and lobbying. Our founding fathers would be so disappointed in the current state of our pay-to-play democracy, as the general will of everyday citizens is barely heard amongst the gigantic lobbying of big oil, big gun, big pharma, big agriculture, and other anti-health, anti-earth, and anti-human forces.
عمو الحمد لله على سلامتك يا عمو. وين كنت موجودة ساعة الضربة؟ إيش حسيت ساعتها؟ ليش دمعة بعيونك يا عم؟
حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. يعني وين العالم؟ وين العالم من غزة؟ يعني الأمة العربية الإسلامية مجتمعة، أين هي من غزة؟ وين العالم؟ اللي بيطالب حقوق الإنسان، أين أنتم؟ هي غزة. بيوت تدمر، ناس نازحين في خيامها، دمرت كل خيامنا، الآن لا مأوى لنا إلا الله سبحانه وتعالى.
Each politician should be required to be photographed wearing a jumpsuit like you would see in NASCAR or F1, covered with the logos of the companies and industries that own them. The politicians we see before us today are mostly all puppets of big business.
You know, it used to be global cooling. If you look back years ago in the 1920s and the 1930s, they said, global cooling will kill the world. We have to do something. Then they said global warming will kill the world. But then it started getting cooler, so now they could just call it climate change, because that way they can't miss. It's climate change. Because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, it's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. No more global warming, no more global cooling. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong. They were made by stupid people that have cost their countries fortunes and given those same countries no chance for success. If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail.
Throughout my entire life, our national government has traded our country's and our planet's future stability and prosperity for short-term capital gain. So what do? How do we stop the two runaway trains that are the Democratic and Republican parties? In my opinion, going forward, they will clearly go down as the parties that represent big business and industry. But what about working people? What about the general citizen? What about the middle-class family? What about the average service worker or gig worker? Who represents them? The answer is literally absolutely no one. At this point, the majority of this country is voiceless. But I think I have an idea. We have created a new political party, Green Party 2.0, that is led by Earth First, Health First, Gen Z activists. We are champions of gun control as well as restoring true free speech in this country. This includes online, in the media, and in the workplace. I am proud to say that we have appointed 11 executive committee chairs, including myself. Each of these executive committee members are college-educated young professionals, all of whom sport diversified degrees and notable track records of activism in relevant topics. Democracy has always demanded a lot from its citizens, and it is important we think creatively about our current dilemma as the silenced majority in the United States. Across the country, in the shadows, elected officials are raising the requirements to create new political parties and for independent candidates to appear on the ballot. Even when the required signatures are achieved, petitions are often sued and invalidated by establishment Democrats in a blatant and obvious attempt to reduce any electoral competition. Congressional districts across the U.S. have drifted since the late 90s to disturbing levels of uncompetitiveness as closed inter-party primaries keep producing more and more extreme candidates. We must think creatively about how we can take back our government as the American people, as the working class, as upcoming generations, and even as the true majority from the powers that be. Our government is occupied from the inside by international and corporate forces, and they have their heels dug in deep. Our federal government, some would say, is broken.
For now, I don't want to go back in the system. I think it's broken.
And I'm so disgusted with Washington, D.C. I hate politics. The two-party system is extremely broken. It is failing all of us.
I think even more than it is broken, I think that the major existing parties just are what they are. They are deeply and firmly rooted. They both lead to the same place and have very little incentive to change or reform a system that serves them personally and serves them well. The Democrats don't even have interest in running a proper primary. As an Earth First, Health First minded candidate, I'm deeply concerned about the health and sustainability of our home planet, as well as our own bodies, and see vividly how the two are interwoven and interrelated. It is of utmost importance that we pay much closer attention to the chemicals and pollution we are releasing into the air, our waters, spraying on our crops, processing into our foods, and feeding to our loved ones. The salary for being a congressman would be more than anyone in my family has ever made, and would be more than enough for me. I hold no stocks or crypto and pledge to never hold any while serving in office. I do believe I am called to a higher cause, to restore a democracy that represents everyone, not just a very small class of privileged ruling class Americans. There is a glaring need for revolutionary change the kind that will go down in history books and be taught for centuries to come. We can accomplish a lot, quickly, by embracing the concept of write-in voting and stop having our future spoon-fed to us by the nefarious ruling class. I aim to spark a movement of young professionals and working-class community leaders that can now be emboldened by my successful bid for federal office, the power of write-in campaigns, and the genuine reach of grassroots organizing. 50% of eligible voters do not vote in our great district of NJ-5, and the numbers are similar across the country spanning all election cycles. It may seem like the stranglehold that Democrats and Republicans have on our government is too vast and too onerous to overcome, but that is all by design. Their hold is much, much weaker than they would ever have you fully understand. We only need 33% to win in a system where 3 parties are relevant. A new party is not even that crazy of an idea, and we are the only advanced democracy in the world without at least 3 parties represented in our federal or national level of government. Of the countries in the world with the most vibrant democracies, gauged here by voter turnout over 70% of the eligible population, none have only 2 parties represented at a national level. 2 parties is not enough space to color the many variations of ideologies and value systems that exist in this country. Having more parties will push our federal government to a needed next chapter of compromise and honest negotiation, breaking us out of the gridlock and finger-pointing that we are now all so accustomed to. Despite what I have seen, I will never lose hope. Our planet, and by extension, our country, are worth fighting for. We must embrace science. We must embrace the fact that we are in a climate emergency. At this point, bought media doesn't even cover all of the large-scale natural disasters that are happening almost weekly. We must stop banning books and work to learn ever-poignant lessons from our turbulent history as a country. We must educate our children with unbiased perspectives of history so they may grow into the upcoming leaders this country is starving for. We must pass the torch to the next generation, or at the very least, allow them to be sufficiently represented in our government. At the time of this video, Gen Z has only 1 sole member representing them in Congress. We must work to have free media that is not bought and paid for by the duopoly uniparty. We must work to flag conflicts of interest and misinformation in everyday reporting, general news, and greater advertising. We must work to end for-profit healthcare and get Americans off of the endless hamster wheel of processed food to prescription drugs. We must embrace common sense solutions like subsidized childcare, elder care, and start investing in our own country's infrastructure instead of shipping our money to Argentina, Israel, and the Ukraine. We must shift our focus as politicians from living to serve billionaires and CEOs to living to serve the everyday American and upcoming generations who are the future. We must do whatever we possibly can to protect free speech, as social media apps are being bought and journalists are being persecuted across the US, UK, Palestine, the greater Middle East, and beyond, in a desperate attempt to control the duopoly, bought media narrative of the ruling class. We must end the for-profit war machine. We must protect our treasured public lands from being privatized and sold to the highest bidder. We must stop ICE from humiliating our friends and neighbors in broad daylight and disappearing people without fair trial. As a wise young woman once said, "We are not heroes. We are doing the bare minimum. We are taking action, ending our complicity, and using our privileges and platforms to stand up for this country so that one day soon it may finally realize its enormous potential."
This genocide and other genocides are being enabled and fueled by our own governments, our institutions, our media and companies. It is our responsibility to end that complicity. And I also... No, not heroes. No, we are doing the bare minimum. What we are doing is hearing and acting upon their calls for people all over the world to take action and end our complicity, to use our privileges, our platforms, to take a stance against this that is in every way unjustifiable.
Please write in Adam Rueda for U.S. Representative on November 3rd, 2026.